pulling back on those mandates very soon. Adams saying, quote, "I'm very proud of how we responded to COVID-19. I look forward to the next weeks going through a real transformation where I don't have to wonder what you look like." Referring to masks, I believe. "We are moving in the right direction. We're going to do it in a safe way." Some other states have done it, some other cities as well. Boston, Philadelphia, and now the New York City mayor saying that New York City is going to phase out vaccine mandates soon, but not yet. Let's bring in our NBA insider, Bill Reiter. Bill, this has been a key topic of conversation all throughout the season. Kyrie Irving, at first, was not allowed to play in any games for the Nets because if he wasn't vaccinated, they didn't want him only playing road games. They gave in to him on that. He's been playing very well of late. How soon do you think he might be able to come back and play home games?
Yeah, Chris, listening to the mayor talk and putting that in the context of some of the optimism I've heard from folks around that Nets organization the last couple weeks, I think it's reasonable to think at some point in March, perhaps, and certainly by April, we're going to see this mandate get lifted and Kyrie Irving have the chance to play. I think we've seen that reflected in a few ways. The odds in Vegas as it relates to the Nets winning the Eastern Conference have dramatically improved in the last 24 hours. That raised some eyebrows around the NBA, and just taking the mayor's words and his enthusiasm as he expressed it to lift this mandate and to get New York City to a place some of the other cities you mentioned certainly makes it sound like Kyrie Irving in the foreseeable future will be able to play games at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn.
They're co-favorites right now to win the Eastern Conference with the Bucks at 3-1. Both those teams are 6-1 to win the NBA championship. Phoenix and Golden State, the only teams with better odds to win it all than the Brooklyn Nets. We've seen Kyrie sparingly this season, but he's starting to heat up a little bit. Last 3 games, averaging 29 points, 5 rebounds, and 7 assists. What kind of a boon would this be for the Nets if he's able to play full-time?
I mean, it would be huge. Obviously, that is an organization waiting on Kevin Durant to come back, and they don't have the luxury that the Sixers have to try and figure out how you figure James Harden and Joel Embiid to make sense, because this is a Nets team that hasn't played well, that has lost a bunch of games of late, that are I think in that 9 spot right now. They need some firepower, and that firepower that's not Ben Simmons whenever we see him back on the floor. They need a superstar they can rely on every single game. That is not something they have. And if Kyrie Irving is back on the floor in Brooklyn, home games and away games in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, Chris, they're not necessarily the Brooklyn Nets team that we're going to see when Kevin Durant comes back, but they're very dangerous, they're very formidable, and you would expect they start to play really well all the way across the board if they've got one of their best players back for home games.
About 25 games left in the regular season, basically a fourth of the season remaining, and then the postseason begins. The playoffs begin in about 8 weeks or so, mid-April. This is the upcoming schedule. They'll begin the post-All-Star break portion of their schedule Thursday at home against the Celtics. So Kyrie probably not going to play in these next several home games, not until the New York City mayor decides to completely phase out the vaccine mandates. We don't know exactly when that'll be, but it does sound like it'll be before the postseason. What's the latest, though, on Ben Simmons and his upcoming debut for the Nets?
Yeah, they've been a little murky, Chris, on the details, but it certainly sounds like from everything that I've heard that they expect him to play over the course of some of those games that you're showing there on the screen, that at some point in the very foreseeable future, he's going to get out there. He has talked about the fact that he's feeling good. Folks that are close to Ben Simmons have told me and other media members, they're trying to spread a message that he's in a great place physically, he's in a great place mentally, he's ready to go. So the expectation is that Simmons will be back in the next week or 2. We think it's guesswork, but that's what we've heard. And if Kyrie Irving does return to home games at some point, maybe in a 2 or 3 or 4 week timeline, you're talking about a Nets team who need every single game. The last thing they want to do is play in the play-in, or even have to be in a situation where they're playing a team like the Sixers, as much as the rest of us would love that in the first round. Every game's going to matter, and it sounds like Ben Simmons will be back pretty soon, and Kyrie Irving will join him for home games. Obviously, he's playing away games right now, shortly after that.
Policy hasn't changed yet, but the New York City mayor is saying that they are looking at phasing out vaccine mandates in the coming weeks in New York City, which would lead the way to Kyrie Irving being able to play in every game for the Brooklyn Nets. Bill Reiter with us here on CBS Sports HQ. The Nets have the 3rd best odds to win the NBA title, tied with the Bucks, the defending champs, at 6-1. Suns with a big lead on the Warriors in the Western Conference. But more on the Nets. Kyrie He said during the All-Star break, just watch our squad after the break. Just watch. We're going to be able to watch a lot more of Kyrie, it looks like, before the postseason begins.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.